What would happen if you stopped drinking everything except water for 30 days? No soda, no juice, no energy drinks, no sweet coffee, just water. Would you lose weight? Would your skin change? Would your energy skyrocket? Or would absolutely nothing happen? The answer is more interesting than you might think. Imagine waking up tomorrow and making one simple rule. For the next 30 days, water is the only drink you're allowed to have. You can still eat normally. You're not fasting. You're not surviving on water alone. You're simply replacing every other beverage with water. And that small change could have a surprisingly big effect, especially if your normal drinks contain a lot of added sugar or calories. But the first few days might be the hardest. Because your body isn't just thirsty, sometimes it wants the drink you've trained it to expect. During the first few days, the biggest challenge may not be hydration at all. It could be habit. If you normally start your morning with coffee, you might immediately notice its absence. If you're used to grabbing a soda with lunch, suddenly reaching for water can feel strangely unsatisfying. And if you're replacing caffeinated drinks, you could experience headaches, tiredness, or irritability if you're used to getting a lot of caffeine. That's because caffeine withdrawal can happen when regular caffeine intake suddenly stops. Meanwhile, if you were drinking sugary beverages every day, you're also removing a significant source of added sugar and calories. So the first few days aren't necessarily about some magical transformation. They're about breaking a routine. And that's where the experiment gets interesting. By the end of the first week, something important may happen. You may simply become less interested in sugary drinks, not because water suddenly became exciting, but because the habit is starting to change. If you were drinking several high-calorie beverages every day and replacing them with water, your total calorie intake could decrease. And here's the key. You're not losing weight because water is some kind of fat-burning potion. You're potentially losing weight because you've removed calories that were coming from drinks. For example, imagine someone regularly drinks several sugary beverages throughout the day. Those calories can add up surprisingly fast. Replace them with water, and you're removing those calories without necessarily changing the amount of food you're eating. But there's an important catch. If you replace those missing calories by eating more food later, the effect could be much smaller. Your overall energy balance still matters. Now you're entering the second week, and this is where people might start expecting dramatic changes. Maybe clearer skin, maybe incredible energy, maybe suddenly looking completely different in the mirror. But real life doesn't work quite like a social media challenge. Water is essential for your body. Your cells need it. Your blood contains it. Your kidneys rely on adequate fluid to function properly, but drinking more water than you need doesn't automatically make you healthier. If you're already adequately hydrated, forcing yourself to drink enormous amounts of water isn't a shortcut to better health. In fact, drinking excessive amounts of water in a short period can be dangerous because it can dilute the sodium concentration in your blood. So the goal isn't drink as much water as humanly possible. The goal is simply to stay adequately hydrated. And for many people, thirst and normal drinking habits are useful signals. Now let's talk about one of the biggest claims you'll hear. Drinking more water will give you perfect skin. It's not that simple. If you're dehydrated, correcting that dehydration can help your body function normally, and your skin may look less affected by dehydration. But if you're already adequately hydrated, drinking huge amounts of extra water isn't guaranteed to transform your skin. And this is a recurring theme throughout the entire experiment. Water is essential, but essential doesn't mean magical. It's like saying oxygen is important. It absolutely is. But breathing twice as much oxygen doesn't mean you'll become twice as healthy. Your body needs the right amount, not unlimited amounts. By week 3, the biggest changes may actually be happening outside your body. You're changing your environment. Think about how many times a day you encounter drinks. At work, at school, at restaurants, while watching TV, during a workout, with a meal. Every time you automatically choose water instead of a sugary drink, you're reinforcing a new habit. And that's potentially one of the most valuable parts of this 30-day experiment. Because health isn't always about finding one incredible trick. Sometimes it's about removing small, repeated behaviors that work against your goals. And if someone drinks a lot of sugary beverages, replacing them with water can be a relatively simple change. But remember, water doesn't replace food. Your body still needs protein, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, and enough total energy. A water-only drink challenge is completely different from trying to survive on water alone. The second one is dangerous. And finally, day 30. You look back at the month. 30 days without soda, 30 days without juice, 30 days without energy drinks, 30 days without turning every meal into a sugary beverage. What actually happened? Maybe you lost some weight. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you noticed fewer cravings. Maybe your energy felt different. Maybe you simply discovered that you don't need certain drinks as often as you thought. And that last result might be the most important, because the experiment isn't really about water. It's about discovering how much of your daily routine happens automatically. Here's the surprising part. If you already drink mostly water and you're adequately hydrated, drinking only water for 30 days may not produce some dramatic physical transformation. But if your normal routine includes lots of sugary or high-calorie drinks, the change could be much more meaningful. That's because you're not really benefiting from some mysterious property of water. You're benefiting from what you're no longer drinking. Less added sugar, potentially fewer calories, and fewer opportunities to consume calories without feeling particularly full. So the headline might be, "Drinking only water changed everything." But the more honest conclusion is, changing what you drink can change what you consume. And that's a much more useful lesson. So, what happens if you drink only water for 30 days? You might reduce your calorie intake. You might cut a significant amount of added sugar from your diet. You might develop a stronger water drinking habit. And depending on what you were drinking before, you might notice changes in your weight or how you feel. But water isn't a miracle drug. You don't need to force yourself to drink extreme amounts. And you definitely don't need to stop eating food. The healthiest version of this challenge isn't about drinking as much water as possible. It's about making water your default drink while still giving your body the nutrition it needs. And if you're thinking about trying a major dietary change yourself, especially if you have a medical condition or take medication, it's worth talking with a qualified healthcare professional first. So now I'm curious, if you had to choose one drink for the next 30 days, could you give up everything except water? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed discovering what really happens when you change one tiny habit for 30 days, subscribe. Because next time, we're taking the experiment even further. What happens if you stop sleeping?